Hey, welcome back to 3D Sorcery. It's been quite some time since I actually put a video on here, so we're going to change that. Basically, this year, I want to spend a lot of time doing tutorials, different things, just kind of showing a lot of my expertise with the community and just the different creative projects that I do. Specifically, I'm really excited because I've kind of pivoted a little bit. I'm still going to be doing a little bit of my figures and sculptures and things that I normally do, but I'm actually going to be creating a video game this year. So I've been really knee deep into it right now, and I'm going to share a lot of different updates from the different things I'm creating, from the levels to the characters to all the different elements that go into it. It's going to be like kind of a retro horror shooter style game. So I'm really excited to kind of kick that off and show a bunch of demos and different things that I'm doing. So look forward to seeing that on this channel very soon. Got a lot of stuff queued up for that. And with that, you're going to get a lot of, creation stuff. I'll be getting, character designs and all the other things that I have that go with it. I'll be putting in on there. So really excited to show that and kind of kick that your way. If you like monsters and zombies and all that, it's definitely going in there. A lot of influences that I love will be going in there as well. That's kind of a big update. I haven't been really doing anything with the channel. I uploaded the werewolf video, which I thought was really cool. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do a ton of these. These are going to be great. And then, life hits and other things happen. So here we are. We're back in the second video. So welcome back to the channel. Just wanted to drop a line to let everybody know that I'm going to be doing some cool stuff on here that I'm super excited about. And to kick things off, I'm going to show you a little video of a demon that I created. Kind of my low poly, workflow for a demon. So you can check that out after this. It's going to just queue up right after this. I'll kind of talk through it. And it's kind of been really interesting to just dive back into video games. I came from the video game industry years ago. Had an indie game studio that I was running, then worked for my other indie game studio. You kind of bounce around on different projects. But now I'm back in it, full go, kind of going at it alone, just like a one-man show. So creating the kind of projects that I want to do specifically. So for my first project, I'm going with a retro FPS kind of boomer shooter. Tons of gore, tons of violence, more in the vein of the type of projects or games that I used to play late 90s, early 2000s. Definitely in that vein. So that's where we're going to go with that. But super excited to kind of go down that road and immerse myself back in creation, especially like digital content creation and creating a product, an end product that I can actually get out there and show to people. I'm super excited about. So that's kind of where I'm going to be heading with 3D Sorcery in the coming future. And I'll be doing, I'll slide in a couple different 3D printing and action figure and sculpture stuff that I like to do in there as well. But for the most part, it's going to be game creation stuff. When I'm not doing this kind of creative work for clients and other people and sculptures and toys and all that kind of stuff, I'm teaching. I teach virtual reality and things of that nature. So I'm going to show a lot of that on here and really kind of just lay it all out there and show the different facets of the project as these things kind of come to fruition. It's really cool to kind of just like say, I always recommend this to creatives is like, hey, if you're going to do a project, just immerse yourself in the project and start creating it and doing it. One of the biggest hurdles for me was being I was always like an artistic animator style guy. I never really dove too much into heavy coding and things of that nature. And this past year, I literally kind of made a goal to myself to like, you're going to be a coder. You're going to learn, like, I'm using Unity for the game engine that I'm working on, just to be upfront. You're going to learn C#. You're going to learn like kind of everything about it and learn how to code. And so for the past like probably year, I've been really immersing myself in C#, the language, and just kind of understanding the syntax and how to code different scripts, how games are put together, really analyzing and understanding different elements of the C# scripting language, especially as it applies to Unity. So it's been really kind of cool and different to just kind of go down a different path and learn a new skill set. I'm no pro by any means, but I'm doing enough to get it working and have it implemented in my game and have the game actually functioning, which is really cool. And I think that when you're faced with problems, it's always cool to kind of find the answers to those problems yourself, especially if you're an independent designer trying to make something yourself, like launch a video game or things like that. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be showing you updates. I'm going to leave you here with the demon that I'm doing, just kind of like a speed version sculpt of what I did. It's one of the characters that's going to be in the game that I'm working on right now. Kind of going back to like box modeling a little bit. Not super crazy detailed sculptures and characters, more kind of like fun box modeling, like old school modeling that you would have seen in like late 90s games, like PlayStation 2 era stuff. So show you my process on that. Hope you dig it, and enjoy the channel. We'll be releasing a bunch more updates in the coming weeks. So thanks again. Welcome back to 3D Sorcery. So what I like to do is kind of show my process for going through this model. And typically when I start, I'll even start as simple as just creating some spheres inside of Maya. I like to do all my work in Maya. And I'll just subdivide them a bunch of times and then basically bring them into sculpt mode. As you can see right here, I'm just taking this, which started out as an initial sphere, and just extruding it and sculpting it and kind of getting it into the shape I want. Then I start taking other spheres, like you saw right there, basically smoothing those out, adding more detail, and sculpting those into the pieces. And when you're working with low poly, we don't need to get so fine-tuned. Like, I don't need to go into ZBrush. I can do this all in Maya and just kind of focus on like the chunks, right? Working on like the head, kind of getting the general shape of what I want that head to look like, or the arm, or right now, you know, I've separated the jaw into like a lower piece, right? I'm just kind of doing some general sculpting to get an idea of the shape, right? I don't need to go crazy into ZBrush to really get all these fine-tuned details. If it's a stylized character, like something that you're gonna do in, you know, something that's reminiscent of like the PS2 era, right? Or retro style. You don't need to go crazy with a program like ZBrush and bake all this high-res detail in, unless you plan on going to that high-res state later. Personally, I don't plan on doing that. I plan on staying kind of in the low-res realm. So, you know, essentially what I'm doing here is I'm doing a high-res sculpt, but it's kind of more of a basic one just to get the general proportions and shape. So you can see right there, I'm going through and I'm fine-tuning each of these pieces. And really, for a process like this, I just use spheres. I go in and I use a ton of spheres and I smooth them out, and I just start kind of pulling and pushing and getting the initial shape or armature of the character I'm trying to do. Now these are all, you know, essentially high res, right? It's kind of like you know, not quite as high res as ZBrush, but definitely high res, so I can get, you know, some type of a shape, you know, like right here, working on the little tail, duplicating pieces, things like that, right? So coming through and getting all these pieces done and getting it to a point where I can, you know, get the silhouette of the character I'm looking at and thinking, okay, this would work. And then once I'm comfortable with that, essentially what I'll do is start grouping these elements together, right? So, you know, if we're talking about like the torso here, that would be its own shape. So with the head, so with these different elements, right? They'd all kind of be their own different shapes. And then what we're gonna do is just single them out, just like I have right here, single it out, and then use that as a piece that I can do lower retopology on. And I just use the quad draw inside of Maya. I'm just using the modeling toolkit. I go through and I make it really simple in terms of good edge flow, taking those high-res pieces that I just made. And you could do this if you made the piece in ZBrush or whatever program. I just figure, hey, I'm in Maya, I might as well just do it in here. It's quick, it's easy, it's fast. So I go through and I just start retopologizing that entire piece, you know, just to get the ultimate shape that I'm looking for, right? Then I'll keep coming in, I'll keep working at it, and I'll work my way around the entire piece, trying to be cognizant of the edge flow, trying to make it so the model itself isn't too contorted and has kind of a decent edge flow to it. So it'll be something that later, if I'm going to animate it, I know will deform the right way. And I try to look at the different pieces, and I'm kind of flying around right here. But look at those different areas and think about how the model's going to deform if you're going to animate it, and just start kind of optimizing it as you go. So, now once you get that low poly piece, like this one's all kind of already topologized, I just start modifying that low poly piece to make it even more low poly. I try to take out as many excess geometry pieces that aren't needed that are in there, and I'll use like the weld tool inside the modeling toolkit to do so. That really helps just to kind of take it down, and then you'll have something like that, like a nice kind of interesting piece you can work with. One of the things I like to do is also like cut away at some of the geometry, like I'm doing kind of in this spot right here. And what that does is allow me to kind of circularize those specific areas, so I can then kind of extrude in and build an area for, this particular character would be like an arm socket, right? I could build an arm that kind of comes out of that area, and I'll even cut it in half. So I'm just working on one half of the model if it's symmetrical, and then go back in and weld it back together. And right here, we're doing more of the same. We're just coming into these different pieces that I've sculpted with, basic geometry that now we have high-res pieces on, and we're just building out the different components. So there's like the lower jaw, and then as we move around, then we'll work on the horns, right? We'll work on all of these different pieces that just kind of help us get to where it needs to be. Now, I noticed if right there, you might have noticed that, hey, what was going on with that piece? I was actually working on a piece where the normals were inverted, so the quad draw wasn't working right. But once you go ahead and reset those, then you're good. So then you'd see him going through and kind of working on the horn, getting that all done, kind of keeping in my mind, hey, this is going to be a low poly character, so we don't need to go crazy with the geometry. Kind of just imply the different pieces that you're going to make, and you can use that with your topology, right? And some of the smoothing. You don't need to go super nuts. So, just kind of assess the pieces as you go and really start to kind of just iron them out and think about the topology and the symmetry and all the different pieces that you're working on, and just get those pieces together. So coming in, just getting all of that, etc. Making space for the eyes, all that kind of fun stuff. At this point, you kind of want to assess your model and any other pieces that you have and go through, and again, you want to, do your retopology on those, like kind of like these little arm gauntlets that I have going right here. Work on those different pieces and just work your way around and get those all kind of dialed in, just so you have that nice edge flow and retopology you're looking for. Now remember, this is an older kind of retro style game, so I don't need to go crazy. A lot of the work that I'm doing I can do within the texture work. I don't need to go insane with the details. I'm not actually even baking any details. Because I'm going more of an old school style, I'm not going to be baking any ambient occlusion or anything like that. I'm really working as if I'm working like late 90s. Like, you know, we're falling into the Half-Life Quake era, right? This is old school box modeling at its finest, right? We're not thinking about, you know, baking in any light and shadow. We're going to do all that in the art phase when we actually start painting this piece. After I've got my core pieces done, I like to come in and just model kind of ancillary pieces. So things like the fingers or any little spikes or anything like that that are kind of extra, that are maybe kind of a pain to model a little bit if you're doing it in high res, or you just don't want to retopologize or there's no need for it. I'll come in and model those pieces. So you can see right here, I'm just doing little spikes and things of that nature. Those are perfect, you know, coming in with like your cylinder tool and just kind of building out some fingers or little elements or teeth right here, just going nuts with teeth. You know, there's no way I'm going to sit there and sculpt a bunch of little teeth when I could just easily come in with some simple geometry and just build out some kind of stylized teeth very, very easily in the model and just kind of place them as I go. I'm just duplicating and just throwing those all over the place. It would be such a pain to actually go in and try to retopologize every little tooth when you could just literally come in and make some. Same with the eyes, just, you know, put some spheres in there. Just simple stuff, like kind of just create ancillary pieces that you need. And then we move on to the best part, the UV stage. For me, I honestly just like to UV the entire model just like that, using a planar projection, and then I'll come in and just start breaking it apart. You see, I'm taking all these different pieces and I'm just cutting them all. Like you do one giant UV snapshot, one giant UV projection, and then I come in and I just start breaking every piece apart and literally just start adding cuts everywhere where I know that these pieces need to be expanded. So I'm literally going shell by shell, adding in cut by cut, even doing reprojections on certain areas that I need it, and I just go in and I literally just kind of UV unwrap every single part of the model. And you want to make sure, you know, use that checkerboard pattern. I use it all the time in Maya. It really, really helps me to kind of understand, or even if I need to come in and fix some of the geometry so it expands a little bit better on the shells themselves. But, you know, make sure it looks halfway decent. Go through and then build your giant kind of UV map, right? You have all these shells, use the align tool and then the layout to kind of lay everything out on one giant map that you can use to really get in there and bring into something like Mudbox and start painting. Now, Mudbox it's kind of a dicey subject with 3D modelers, right? In one hand, you know, it came from the film side, and it's a really good tool to kind of get, I feel like, initial textures on a model. You know, in the perfect world, I would go into Substance Painter and do stuff, but for an old school retro model, if you just want to get some color on something and just kind of have fun painting it, use Mudbox. Just get in there and start throwing color on it. There are some caveats to Mudbox, which are kind of a stinker, you know, like it's really, really, it wants to make sure that your model is perfectly made, and Substance really doesn't care too much, but Mudbox, like if you've got any little issues on your model, like manifold geometry or things like that are just causing problems, it's gonna wig out and it's gonna give you weird stuff on your textures. I found when I use Mudbox, when I cut my models, you can see right here how he's like kind of missing half his body. When I cut my models in half, I feel like I get a much better result painting the model when I have kind of separate objects and pieces. If you're trying to do like two sides at once, like symmetrical painting, it's not great. It doesn't do a good job. It tends to add like weird stuff on your model and it has all kinds of problems. But if you're just painting objects by themselves, it works great. So if you're going to paint symmetrically, I would recommend just using one half of the model and just kind of like try to, imagine that side of the model fully painted and just paint one half of it. It works pretty good if you're doing that. If you go crazier beyond that, it starts to wig out and it kind of has issues. It's definitely not the best program, but if you think about it, back in the day, before Substance and all these other, this was what we had to use. Like, this was the de facto kind of painting app for creating like really cool textures on models. And still today, it's good for some things. Like, honestly, it could be better, but I use it all the time for quickie stuff. Like, if I just need some quick textures on something and I just don't want to get into like setting something up like so perfect in Substance, sometimes I'll just go into Mudbox and just start painting it up. I really love, still to this day, their burn and dodge tools are awesome. Like, I don't understand why there's some of the other painting apps that are out there don't have as good as burn and dodge tools as the one that Maya has. It's really great for just kind of insinuating light and shadow on models, and even just for painting textures. I use it all the time. You can see right here, I'm literally using the dodge tool to just come in and add tons of light and onto a certain area, or the burn tool to add, shadows on areas. And you can literally think of it as almost like an airbrush. Just come in and just nail out all those details and get it to where you want. And then when you're done, you export everything out, you put your model back together, you export your textures, and boom, you get something like that, which I feel like is pretty good. It's not meant to be, I'm not, for this project, I am not going AAA. I'm going retro style. I want it to look like it existed on something like the PS2. And I think the result is pretty good. So, hope you enjoy. This is my workflow. I know it was super fast, like kind of running through this and trying to get, an idea, but that's what I do for my models. Enjoy. Here's my demon. Thanks.